Would the gentleman yield for a question, Mr. Speaker?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yields.
I see from lines 300 through 303 that your bill prohibits an individual who's carrying a concealed handgun from consuming alcohol whilst in the premises. Can you tell the body for what reason would an individual who has a concealed handgun go into a bar or a nightclub after, say, 10:30, 11:30, where food is no longer served, but to drink?
Mr. Speaker, I can't speak to anyone's motivations. They might enjoy listening to the music. I don't know.
Would the gentleman yield for another question?
I yield.
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yield.
Is there any language in your statute that requires the customer to inform management that he or she is carrying a concealed weapon?
I would respond to the gentleman that there is not.
Would the gentleman yield for another question, Mr.
Will
Speaker?
the gentleman yield?
I'll be happy to yield.
Gentleman's happy to. I'm not happy.
I would ask the gentleman, how would you enforce prohibiting somebody who is carrying a concealed weapon from drinking if they don't have to inform management, or is this one of self-policing?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would respond to the gentleman with the logic that I assume he normally applies in situations involving firearms. I know the gentleman is not a friend to those who choose to avail themselves of the right of self-protection. But by his logic and by the logic of those who subscribe to his philosophy on this matter, if we put it in the law, it should stop people from doing the behavior, right? If we say you can't carry a gun into a restaurant, then of course nobody's going to do it, are they? If we say you can't carry a gun, be it through the law or through a regulation or a rule, that you can't bring a gun onto a college campus, then of course no one's going to do that, right? Mr. Speaker, I would submit that the gentleman's logic is if we put it in the code, then nobody's going to break the law. Now, the dirty little secret is that people break this law all the time already. People are already going into restaurants that serve alcohol with guns on their person, and we call those people criminals. They're felons, they're criminals, they're mentally ill. They're already doing it. The people who are not bringing weapons into these establishments are the law-abiding gun owners of Virginia, who the gentleman is implying will be breaking the law left and right. I disagree with the gentleman that that's going to be the case. I remind the gentleman that about 0.5% of all the concealed weapon permits that have ever been issued in the Commonwealth of Virginia have been revoked because of illegal behavior on the part of the permittee. I further remind the gentleman that around 0.1% of all people who have had their handgun permit revoked have had it revoked because of a misuse of that firearm. So 99.9% of the people who've ever been issued permits do not violate the law with their weapon. So I don't know if the gentleman believes that by putting things in the law to say you can't do a behavior, that we're stopping people from doing it, then of course this bill is everything he needs. If the gentleman believes, as I do, that the only people who are being impacted by the law as it stands right now are the law-abiding gun owners of Virginia, then, you know, if the members of the body agree with me that they're the only people being impacted, then we should not worry about them continuing to abide by the law when we pass this bill.
Will the gentleman yield for another question?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
I see from his proposed legislation that there would be an exemption for law enforcement, including federal law enforcement officers. Does this mean that a federal law enforcement officer would be allowed to carry a concealed weapon into a bar and would be allowed to drink?
I would submit to the gentleman, Mr. Speaker, that that is already the law.
And for the question, Mr. Speaker.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Gentleman yields.
What would be the rationale in not allowing other people who carry concealed weapons to drink, but to allow a, say, DEA officer to drink whilst carrying a concealed weapon?
Mr. Speaker, if the gentleman wants to offer a friendly amendment that we allow all law-abiding people to have wine with their dinner, I am amenable to that amendment. If he is asking me the distinction between a regular citizen and a DEA agent who is working a case, perhaps, and may need to go into that establishment while undercover, and as part of a biker gang or whatever he may be doing, and have a beer while he's got his gun on him. If the gentleman doesn't understand that, I don't know if I can help him understand it any better.
Further question, Mr. Speaker.
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman
Well, I
yields.
appreciate the suggested tutorial. I'd ask the patron the following question. Was he aware that in 1999 an intoxicated off-duty DE agent shot 2 men after a confrontation and argument in Rooney's Grill and Bar in Hampton? And did he consider that when he proposed this legislation?
Mr. Speaker, I did not propose the legislation that made it legal for on-duty law enforcement officers or off-duty law enforcement officers to drink while possessing their weapon. I am making the change for the rest of Virginians, but I would submit to the gentleman that pursuant to his theory that if you make something illegal, nobody will do it, that DEA agent was breaking the law.
Would the gentleman yield for another question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yields.
I listened carefully to the gentleman's math and figures wherein 99.9% of the people who are issued concealed gun permits don't break the law, and would ask the gentleman if he was aware of the fact that since Delegate Griffith said last year, quote, most of these folks who have concealed weapon permits do not break the rules. They have a good track record of following the rules. And as I said, they are very proud of the fact that they don't break the rules. Is the gentleman aware that since that statement last year, 844 Virginians who had concealed gun permits had those permits revoked for untoward or illegal conduct?
Here's what I'm aware of, Mr. Speaker. Since 1995, there have been 478,226 concealed handgun permits issued in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Of those, 2,993 have been revoked for general violations of the law. That is 0.6% of all the permits ever issued being revoked. The 0.1% that I was referring to was the instances in which the handgun itself was used illegally. The general violations are for issues like drinking and driving. While you have your handgun in your car, maybe the police officer pulls you over, finds out that you're a permit holder, you're turned into the circuit court, and the court revokes your permit. So again, I'm comfortable with my math, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, would the gentleman yield for a final question?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Gentleman yields.
I've noticed that when I ask questions, the gentleman answers a question, but not mine. But I would ask him this. Is it a good idea to go into a bar where they're serving alcohol and where you have a concealed weapon? As a general theory, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Mr. Speaker, I know the gentleman misses the art of cross-examination, but I am not one of his witnesses on the stand. I would say to the gentleman that I support the rights of law-abiding gun owners that we already recognize everywhere else in the Commonwealth of Virginia to be able to go out to dinner and be able to enjoy dinner in a place like downtown Richmond, where they might have to walk a long way to their car after they enjoy a meal, where they're parked in a secluded parking lot. I'd advise the gentleman that even though you can open carry in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now, it is convenient for a man who walks into a restaurant that serves alcohol to be able to walk into that restaurant and drink a beer as long as he takes his jacket off. What must a woman do if she's dressed in a nice dress, she has perhaps been a victim of crime, perhaps decided that she's not going to be victimized again and availed herself of this right? Where is she supposed to wear her gun in open plain sight so that she's not in violation of the law? Is she supposed to wear a shoulder holster rig with her $250 dress? I would submit that she shouldn't, that she should be allowed as a law-abiding citizen to keep her weapon in her purse, in her jacket, wherever it may be concealed, and that we remove this distinction between open carry and concealed carry for people who want to avail themselves of their right of self-protection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.